My parents only seemed to care about my sister's promotions. When I overheard them calling me a charity case at her birthday dinner, I lost it. So I sent them one final transfer, $55,000. You'll need it when she asks for another house. You transferred $55,000 to them? My friend Nora asked, her voice low and stunned over the phone. Yep, I replied. It was either that or scream across the rooftop terrace during my sister's birthday party. And you wrote, what was it again? You'll need it when she asks for another house. There was a long pause on the other end. You are colder than glacier water. We're finally done being the family ATM, I said. Because the truth is, I spent 38 years hoping my parents would love me the way they worshipped my sister. I bent backwards trying to earn that same beam in their eyes. But the night I overheard them calling me a charity case, something snapped. I realized, they never really saw me. Just what I could give. And I was done giving. I don't think anyone really prepares you for what it's like when your own family starts treating you like an obligation. It doesn't happen all at once. It's small things, slow things. The way your mom pauses just half a second longer before asking about your life, as if searching for something worth celebrating. The way your dad's eyes light up when your sister walks into the room, but barely flicker when you do. The way your own accomplishments are nice, but hers are impressive, incredible, something to be proud of. I grew up in Shoreline, Washington, a sleepy suburb just north of Seattle. My dad, Milton, worked in supply chain logistics. My mom, Ruth, ran story time at the public library 3 days a week. We had a 3-bedroom house with an overgrown apple tree in the back and floral curtains that smelled like cinnamon when the sun hit them. My sister, Eliza, was born 2 years after me, and from the moment she came along, it was like the sun rose and set around her. When we were little, it was innocent enough, her baby giggles made everyone laugh, she got to pick the movie on Fridays, my parents went to every dance recital and school play she was in. I didn't mind at first. I told myself, she's younger, she needs more attention. I was the mature one, the quiet one, the responsible daughter. But being the responsible one meant I got left behind a lot. Like the time I scraped together enough money from my part-time job at the Safeway bakery to buy my own prom dress, a pale blue thing I'd found on clearance. I was so proud of it. Meanwhile, my parents drove Eliza to Bellevue the next day and spent $300 on hers because she's always dreamed of that exact one, sweetie. Or when I got accepted to the University of Washington and paid my own tuition through a patchwork of scholarships, work-study, and pure grit. They said, "Good job, Avery," over dinner and never brought it up again. Eliza? When she got into a small out-of-state liberal arts school for communications, they threw her a party. Balloons. Custom cake. Even invited her high school friends. I kept telling myself it didn't matter. That I wasn't doing all this for praise. But I would have been lying if I said it didn't sting. It did. It stung for years. When I graduated and landed a job at a mid-sized finance firm, I sent them a photo of my first office. My dad responded with a thumbs-up emoji. When Eliza got an entry-level marketing assistant job in Los Angeles, they drove down the coast to help her move in and decorated her apartment. She quit that job less than a year later because she said her boss was toxic. They floated her. Paid her rent for 8 months. Sent her gift cards just so you can treat yourself. I once asked my dad if he thought maybe I could crash at their place for a week while my apartment was being renovated. He told me, "You're almost 30. It's time to learn how to stand on your own." I didn't respond. I just found a short-term sublet and moved on. Ross, my ex-husband, saw it early on. He called it emotional starvation. We were married for 8 years before the silence between us got too big to ignore. We never had kids, partly because we were always saving, always bracing for something. And because I think deep down, I was terrified I'd end up loving a child the way my parents loved Eliza, lopsided, blind. I told my parents about the divorce over lunch at their place. My mom didn't even pause while peeling an apple. She just said, "That's unfortunate. But Eliza and Marcus are talking about having a baby soon." Marcus was Eliza's fiancé. Now ex-husband, from what I hear. The final straw came out a crisp September evening 2 years ago. Eliza threw herself a 36th birthday party on the rooftop terrace of an upscale hotel in downtown Seattle. It was absurd. Caterers, a violinist, even a photographer she hired to make sure everyone looked good. I wasn't going to go, but I thought maybe, just maybe, I could use it as a chance to reconnect. I wore a deep green dress I'd splurged on, did my makeup, and even brought a gift, a leather-bound planner I knew she liked. I was seated at the far end of the table, next to someone's coworker's date. I didn't mind. I made small talk, sipped my wine, and watched Eliza hold court like a movie star. At one point, I excused myself to go to the bathroom. The restroom was down a hallway near the back, past the glass doors leading to the balcony lounge. As I was coming back, I slowed near the entrance, not deliberately eavesdropping, just moving carefully in heels. That's when I heard them. "I'm telling you," my dad said, laughing softly. "She's really made something of herself." My mom's voice followed. "She has. Not like Avery. Always kind of needy." My father exhaled, the way he did when he was trying to soften the truth. "We've done what we can. But Eliza, she's always been easy to be proud of." My mom chuckled. "Avery was always a bit of a charity case." They both laughed. I stood there for what felt like hours. A charity case. I don't even remember walking back to the table. I just remember my hands feeling like ice and my chest hollow. I went through the motions: dessert, speeches, the group photo. I hugged Eliza goodbye, kissed my mom's cheek, and smiled like everything was fine. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen counter with my laptop. I opened my banking app. My savings were solid. I'd been prudent for years, living below my means, working my way up to senior manager. $91,000 in savings. I wired $55,000 to my parents' joint account. I had their details saved from helping them switch banks 2 years ago. In the memo line, I typed, "You'll need it when she asks for another house." Then I blocked them. Phone. Email. Everything. I didn't cry. I just felt clean. A week later, a letter arrived from my mother. 3 sentences, handwritten in her wobbly cursive. "We don't understand. What are you doing? Why are you being like this?" No apology. No mention of what she said. Just confusion that the piggy bank had shut itself. I never wrote back. Eliza messaged me on Instagram. "Hey, are you okay?" I deleted the app. I left Seattle 3 months later. Sold my apartment. Bought a small house in Spokane, near the river. It's quiet here. Slower. I work remotely. I go on hikes. I joined a local ceramics class. I even started dating again, though I'm not looking for anything serious. For the first time in my adult life, I feel like I'm not constantly chasing the approval of people who've already decided I'm not worth their full attention. They say family is everything. But sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you the most only know how to love a version of you that doesn't exist. I stopped trying to be her. I stopped waiting for the smile. "Thank you. We're proud of you too." And I gave them exactly what they saw me as: a bank account. One final withdrawal. Because even though it broke something in me to admit it, they never really wanted me. Just what I could give. They never called. Not a single call. I thought maybe they would, maybe after the money hit their account, after the shock wore off, they'd try to reach out. Not to apologize, not really. But to ask what that message meant, to ask what they'd done wrong. Even an angry voicemail would have been something. But there was just silence. And maybe that's what made everything settle into place. That silence said more than any words could. For a while, I kept expecting someone to show up. My mom, maybe, on my doorstep in Spokane with some half-hearted baked goods and a forced smile. Eliza, with her hands on her hips, demanded to know why I was being so dramatic. But no one came. I went back to work the following Monday like nothing had happened. I logged into Zoom, sat in on strategy calls, answered emails. None of my coworkers had any idea that I'd just severed myself from my family with one memo line and a transfer code. I'd love to say I felt empowered, strong, liberated. But mostly I felt numb. Like I had gone to a funeral no one else attended. It wasn't immediate, but after a couple of weeks, something strange happened. I started sleeping better. Deeper. I didn't grind my teeth at night. My jaw, which had been perpetually tense for years, loosened. I no longer rehearse conversations in my head, trying to predict what my parents might say next or how I could say something that finally got through to them. Because there was nothing left to say. About 6 weeks after the dinner, Nora, my closest friend from college, drove out from Tacoma to visit me for the weekend. We hadn't seen each other in person since my divorce. She brought wine, a box of overpriced pastries, and a warmth I didn't realize I'd missed. "So," she said, as we settled onto the back patio, wrapped in blankets and watching the pines sway. "You want to talk about it?" I hesitated, then shrugged. "There's not much left to say. You know how they are." "Yeah," she said. But this was different. I guess it just hit me, hearing them say that out loud. Like everything I ever suspected was true. Nora didn't say anything. She just sipped her wine and waited. I took a breath. I kept thinking maybe if I worked harder, succeeded more, they'd finally see me. But I don't think they ever really wanted to. They had Eliza. She was easy. Soft. Flashy. She needed them in a way that made them feel important. And you? I needed them to love me for who I was. And that was inconvenient. The words surprised me, even as I said them. I'd never said that out loud before. The months passed slowly. Spokane in the winter is quiet, snow-heavy trees, dark skies, everything muffled. I found myself falling into a kind of rhythm. Morning coffee, work, walks along the river. I joined a book club, mostly retirees and older women. We met at the local library once a month. They welcomed me without questions. It was a different kind of life. Smaller, but warmer. Once, during one of our book discussions, a woman named Harriet told a story about her sister, how they hadn't spoken in years because their mother always pitted them against each other growing up. "She always needed us to be different," Harriet said. "One golden, one gray. One worthy, one waiting." Those words hung in the air. One golden, one gray. It stuck with me for days afterward. Then, in March, Eliza emailed me. I'd forgotten she still had my old work address. Subject line: "Are you okay?" It was short. "I don't know what happened between you and Mom and Dad, but I feel like you've just vanished. I know things haven't always been perfect, but you're my sister. I miss you. If you want to talk, I'm here. No pressure." She signed it with a heart. I didn't respond. Not out of anger, but because I didn't know what to say. What do you say to someone who stood in the spotlight for decades and never once looked for you in the wings? I thought about all the times I'd celebrated her wins, even when they were handed to her. The times I'd pick up the phone when she cried over a breakup, over job stress, over whatever small disaster she couldn't handle. I thought about how many birthdays of mine went by with just a generic text from her, if anything at all. She was never cruel. That's the tricky part. She just didn't care to notice me. It's hard to explain to people how that kind of indifference can cut deeper than open cruelty. In April, I got word from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years, Danielle, on my mom's side. She sent me a message on Facebook, which I hadn't checked in ages. "Hey, I don't know if you've heard, but Eliza and Marcus are getting divorced. Just thought you might want to know." I stared at the screen for a while. Part of me wanted to feel something. Sympathy. Satisfaction. Anything. But I didn't. Maybe that's what being done really feels like, not anger, not pain, just a kind of stillness. Still, I imagined the scene. Eliza crying on the couch in the house my parents helped her buy. My mom held her hand, brushing her hair, whispering, "You've been through so much, sweetie." And I pictured the money. That $55,000 I gave them, probably gone now. A chunk used for a lawyer, maybe. Maybe a new down payment. The thought didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. It just felt inevitable. One night, I sat on my porch with my laptop and opened a blank document. I didn't know what I was going to write, maybe a letter I'd never send. But instead, I just started typing pieces of my story. The sacrifices. The holidays spent alone. The calls never returned. The way I had become a supporting character in a story where I should have mattered. I didn't write it for them. I wrote it for myself. To remember what was real. To remind myself I hadn't imagined it. To make peace with the fact that sometimes, the family you're born into will never be the one that sees you. And sometimes, the best thing you can do, the most radical, freeing thing, is walk away and build something better with your own two hands. One evening in early May, I was out walking along the Centennial Trail that runs parallel to the Spokane River. The trees were greening up again, and the water was moving fast from all the recent rain. It had that sharp, almost metallic smell spring rivers carry, cold and clean. I passed a young couple with a baby in a wrap against the mother's chest. They were laughing softly, and it wasn't anything in particular that triggered it, but something about the image, something tender and untouched, made my throat tighten. I wasn't grieving my parents anymore. That was done. But I think I was mourning something else entirely, the version of myself that used to believe love had to be earned. Growing up, I was always proving something. Good grades, stable job, responsible choices. While Eliza made messes and everyone scrambled to help her, I swept mine up before anyone noticed. I thought that would matter. That if I just kept being the strong one, the dependable daughter, someone would eventually turn around and say, you know what? You mattered too. But no one did. So, standing there on the riverbank, watching the water churn, I started talking to myself out loud. Not loudly, just quietly enough to hear it in my own voice. You did everything right, Avery, I said. You were never a charity case. You were the one keeping the lights on. You were the one they leaned on, even if they never thanked you. The wind moved through the trees like a whisper, and I stood still until I could breathe without that tightness. Then I kept walking. Later that week, a package arrived at my door. It was small, brown paper, hand-addressed. No return name, just the address of my parents' house in Shoreline. My first instinct was to toss it in the trash. But I couldn't quite make myself do it. I opened it carefully. Inside was a framed photo. Me and Eliza, aged maybe 6 and 8, sitting on the swing set our dad had built. She had chocolate smeared on her cheek. I had a skinned knee and was grinning straight at the camera. Taped to the back was a note in my mom's handwriting, "You were always our steady one. Maybe we didn't know how to show you what that meant. I'm sorry, Avery. Love, Mom." I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't moved to tears. I didn't feel vindicated. If anything, I felt conflicted. Because there it was, an apology. Not complete, not enough to undo years of imbalance, but something. A small crack in the stone wall that had been our family. And yet, the part that stuck with me the most was the word steady. That was always the label, wasn't it? The steady one. The strong one. The one who didn't need it. But even strong people need love. Recognition. Affection. Steady didn't mean unbreakable. I put the photo in a drawer. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't display it either. I wrote a letter back. Handwritten. Careful. Not cruel, but honest. Mom, thank you for the photo and the note. I appreciate that you tried to reach out. I don't know if you really understand what it felt like growing up knowing I had to be excellent just to be noticed. How often I went without comfort, or even basic encouragement. I know you and Dad love Eliza. I just wish you'd made room to love me out loud too. I don't know what our relationship looks like from here. I'm not saying the door is permanently closed. But I need time. Avery, I didn't expect a response. I didn't even hope for one. I just needed to say it. To write it down with my own hand. That's something therapy has helped me understand. Closure doesn't always come from the other person. Sometimes, it's just telling your own story in a way that feels true. Over the next few months, I focused on rebuilding. Not just externally, new town, new habits, but internally, too. I started volunteering on weekends at a community center helping women with budgeting and financial literacy. Many of them were leaving tough situations, abuse, abandonment, generational poverty. They reminded me how vital it is to be seen and taken seriously, especially when the world underestimates you. One woman, Patrice, came to 4 of my sessions. She had 2 jobs, 3 kids, and a quick wit that cracked the room up regularly. After one session, she lingered behind. "You've got a good way of talking," she said. "You make it simple without making me feel stupid." "Thanks," I replied, a little surprised. "Have you ever thought about teaching full-time?" she asked. "Or writing? You got a lot of clarity, girl. Like you've been through the meat grinder and came out clean on the other side." I laughed. But something about it stuck. Maybe this was what all the chaos was pushing me toward. Not revenge. Not severance. But something useful. I didn't need their approval anymore. But I could take everything I learned from being invisible and use it to help other women feel seen. Not out of obligation. But because I wanted to. Because I finally had room to want things just for myself. It wasn't dramatic. There were no grand gestures, no movie-style confrontations. But over time, the most satisfying kind of revenge unfolded, not the vengeful kind with fire and fury, but the cold, steady kind. The kind that comes from choosing peace and watching the people who dismissed you realize they no longer get access to it. By late summer, I had fully settled into my life in Spokane. I started a side consulting business helping women navigate personal finance, especially those recovering from messy divorces or financial abuse. It was deeply personal work, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was giving in a way that filled me instead of draining me. I didn't think much about Eliza anymore. I didn't follow her on social media. I didn't ask about her through mutual acquaintances. I didn't check if she still lived in the house our parents helped her buy or whether she had landed on her feet post-divorce. That part of my life had become like a room I'd moved out of, still there, but no longer mine. Then, one afternoon in early September, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail out of habit. When I checked it, it was my dad. His voice was quieter than I remembered. Strained. "Hey, Avery. It's your father. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. But, well, your mother and I, we're trying to figure a few things out with the house, and Eliza's had some, setbacks. If you could give me a call, we'd appreciate your input. Thanks." I didn't call back. Instead, I sat there, phone still in hand, and just smiled. Setbacks. Input. They still couldn't bring themselves to ask for help directly, not from their charity case. But here they were, reaching out now, after years of ignoring everything I had given. Now that Eliza, their golden girl, couldn't carry the load they'd bet everything on, they were circling back to the steady one. I left the voicemail unanswered. A few weeks later, another letter arrived. This time it was Eliza. It was a much longer letter than my mom's had been. 4 pages, handwritten, her usual loopy cursive. She apologized. Kind of. She said she didn't realize how much I'd done for everyone. That she was young and overwhelmed and never meant to make me feel small. She talked about how things had gotten hard, Marcus had taken more than half in the divorce, and the house was underwater. She was living back with our parents, and things weren't easy. And then she said something I didn't expect. "I always thought you were just built differently. That you didn't need anyone. But maybe that's because I never took the time to ask. I'm sorry, Avery. If there's any chance to reconnect, I'd like to try." I read it twice. Then a third time. And then I put it in a folder labeled letters. I didn't respond. Because here's what I realized, they only looked for me when things fell apart. Not because they loved me. Not because they missed me. But because I had something they wanted: stability, clarity, money. I wasn't going to be the family vault anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I'd just outgrown the need to be needed by people who never truly saw me. My life now was rich in ways I never imagined when I was elbow deep in trying to prove my worth. I had friends who called to check on me, not just when they needed something. I had clients who sent handwritten notes thanking me for helping them refinance, or create budgets, or simply feel less stupid about money. I had quiet mornings with coffee and slow walks along the river. And perhaps most healing of all, I had peace. Not silence. Not the empty kind that comes from being ignored. But the peace that comes when you finally stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. They taught me everything I needed to know about what love isn't. And in doing so, they handed me the blueprint for how I would choose to live the rest of my life, intentionally, compassionately, and on my own terms. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't taking anything back. It's living well enough that they know they lost access to the best thing they never appreciated. And when I sent that $55,000, that wasn't a loss. That was the fee for my freedom. And I paid for it gladly.